This is Rob Turbot for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Privileged to be joined today by the most successful trainer in fight camp history, Tony Sims. How are you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Rob. It's a good introduction, that, mate.
Well, it actually only occurred to me as we were getting ready to do the Zoom that you have 3 wins at fight camp, which is therefore more wins than anybody else. So congratulations. You are the, fight camp TBE trainer.
Yeah, plus they were 2 headliners as well, weren't they? So
there we go. So they probably count for double.
Headliners, couldn't you? Because there's only 4 shows.
Exactly. So they should be worth double as well. So if anybody else, I think Coldwell's on 2, Shane McGuigan's on 2, but so far you're ahead of everybody else. So let's talk about this past weekend. 2 wins for TBE Tony Sims. Let's start with a win for the Doc. John Docherty looked very good in stopping Anthony Fox. You must have been very pleased with that performance.
Yeah, obviously he's still inexperienced at professional level. He was doing a few things wrong in the early rounds, getting caught with silly shots. But I think once he warmed into it, and he got the gist of what Fox was doing, because Fox done a clever move actually, because we thought he was going to come out swinging, and what he done, he just backed away, and he was waiting to hit the Doc with a right hand counter, so he sort of caught Doc out a little bit in the early rounds and caught him with a couple of right hand backhands, and yeah, once Doc got the rhythm and the gist of what he was doing, and he started catching him in a straight 1-2s down the centre and getting the right hook off into the body.
It seemed to me from watching from the outside looking in that Doc was a little bit excited in the first couple of rounds. I feel like potentially, not the occasion got to him, but obviously big platform being fight camp. Did you sense that as a trainer?
I just think he always comes out fast and tries to jump on them. Whatever you say to him about what to do in the first round, he just comes out and jumps on them straight away, and he got caught straight away trying to do that. As I say, Fox is a better fighter than his record. You know, you see the last 3 opponents that he's beat, you know, you can tell he's a decent kid. But he sort of fell into the trap straight away, the Doc. But once he fathomed him out, and he, you know, from say the 3rd round onwards, it was all the Doc really.
You mentioned the fact that he took a couple in the early rounds, or certainly in the first round, took a couple of backhands. How beneficial is it to Doc at this point of his career to come through that? Because obviously we spoke in the week about the fact that you'd been offered Anthony Fox a few fights before, but you wanted to take it and take a few more fights before then. Now you've gone through that. He's been hit. He's come back. How beneficial is that to him at this point of his professional career?
Yeah, you know, it's a great experience for him. And that's what he needed, because, you know, he's blown a lot of people out in the 1st and 2nd rounds, and then he had the 2 6-round distance fights, which was great experience. But even though he had them 2 6-rounders, the opponents weren't firing anything back, so they was just like trying to get through the rounds and covering up. But at least he knew he's done 6 rounds. You know, he's had 6 rounds in the bank twice. Now, with the Anthony Fox fight, you know he's going to come to win. He's a decent kid, he's decent opponents. So you know he's going to come to win, and he knew he was going to fire back. So you ain't just going to blow him away in a round. So, you know, it was good for the Doc, because it was good for me as well, because I can see some stuff we need to work on. Obviously, we work on a lot of stuff in the gym, but when you're actually live and against an opponent that wants to win, you can see the things that you need to work on, you know, and that's why it's always a good thing to meet an opponent like that now. So that when he fights again, obviously he's going to step up again in his next fight again, keep stepping up now. But there's a lot of things to work on back in the gym before he goes back into his next fight.
You mentioned him being stepped up in the next fight and looking to progress now. How big is the step up going to be? Obviously, people will look at Anthony Fox's record and not assume that that's much of a win at all. Obviously, we know that that's not the case. I remember speaking to Doc in Glasgow. I think he'd had about 3 or 4 fights, and he was calling out the British champion then. So where's going to be the next sort of level fight for John?
Well, either like an international 10-round title fight, or a 10-round British title eliminator. You know, if you could do a 10-round British title eliminator, then a 12-round final eliminator. You know, down that route, that's the way I'd like him to go. Obviously, it's down to Matchroom how they want to go with him. But look, you got Lerone Richards, who's, I think he's 13-0, as British and Commonwealth champion. You know, if Doc has another 2 fights, say, a 10-round fight and a 12-round fight, he'd be ready to go with Lerone Richards, I think, by then.
Okay, well, before we come on to your second headline win, just want to touch upon somebody else who you spent a little bit of time with in the bubble, caught up with Matchroom's social content, saw that you'd watched the Daniel Gill fight back with a certain Darren Barker. What was that like?
Yeah, as we said, we've never sat down and watched the fight together because after that fight, he sort of went straight back into training and for his next fight. So we never really watched it or discussed it really. And Matchroom Boxing asked us to sit down and watch the fight together. And if you watched it already, we went behind the scenes and, you know, said what we was feeling at that time in the present rounds, and obviously before the fight and after the fight. And you know, Darren got a bit emotional over I think me and him watching it together for the first time. And although it was 7 years ago, it's still really fresh in both of our minds, you know. And you know, it seems like yesterday. Really, you can remember it all like yesterday, but it was good. It was a great memory and good to go over that fight because I think a lot of people in the country was behind Darren. You know, they knew the emotional struggle he went through, and you know, I think a lot of the country was behind him, pleased for him that he brought that title back from America with him.
I mean, obviously it's been 7 years now, and you know it's the first time you've watched it back together. But just describe, if you can, those emotions. And I mean, it must be right up there with one of your proudest achievements in the sport.
Oh, without a doubt, you know, and it's like I said before, going over to the States and winning a world title to bring it back home with you, you know, as the away fighter, as the challenger, you know, it's a massive thing. And you know, knowing the struggles that he'd been through, the injuries that he was trying to train through as well. It's hard enough training for a fight anyway, especially a top-level fight. Without the injuries, he was badly injured. He couldn't do any running at all. So, you know, the struggles that he had just coming through to get into good condition for that fight and then to actually win the fight the way he did. You know, it was a great night. Great big emotions, great night. It was a fantastic night, not just for him, but for me, for Matchroom, like Eddie Earn, he was new in the game then, pretty new. For all Darren's family, you know, for my family, it was just a brilliant thing, you know. And I had him from like when he turned professional, and he basically won everything with me, British, Commonwealth, European, but the icing on the cake was obviously the world title.
That's enough talk about Darren Barker. He's already got a big enough head as it is. If we carry on talking, I'm sure he's going to ask me to do an interview. Don't want to do that. Moving on to Felix Cash. Ruthless performance against Jason Wellborn, as we mentioned beforehand. Tough customer, hanging around British and even world level over the last few years. Dominant performance from Felix Cash.
Yeah, you know, before the fight, everyone was saying this was his big test. And I feel like he come through that testing with flying colours. I know what a good fighter he is, Felix. He's got all the ability to go on to world level, that kid. You know, he's 27-year-old middleweight. And, you know, bear in mind, I've already had someone like similar to like him in Darren Barker, similar in style and stature and the way they box, fast downs, they're clever, the way they think. They work you out, you know, and he was straight out the blocks, and he'd already had, by the time the second round come round, he'd already had Jason Wellborn worked out. You know, he was slotting in shots to the body, then to the head and back down to the body. I don't think Jason Wellborn knew what really was coming at him. I spoke to him after the fight in the changing room, Jason, and he said, let me tell you something, I was in the best shape ever there. He said, so you've had the best Jason Wellborn, because he said, I knew it was like, I knew I needed to win that fight. So he said that was, you know, I was in the best ever shape, so, which is a good thing as well, because you knew that he'd come out to try and win that fight. But as you see, like, you see that Felix was just on a complete different level to him, you know. And if you look at his fight before, I know it was down at like middleweight, but I thought Metcalf had quite a hard night's work with him before he put him away. He had a good go at Jarrett Hurd. He actually won a couple of them rounds in the first 4 rounds. But with Felix, he wasn't in it at all. I think Felix come out fast. he's too clever for him, too fast for him, too smart for him, and he was just hitting him all over really. And it was a damaging defeat for Jason Wellborn really. I don't know whether he's going to fight on or what, but I mean, for Felix, it just bumps him up to the next level really, and shows you what level he's at.
Me and you have had this conversation in the past. It's also something I've spoken to other people about Felix. He's kind of gone under the radar. He's been a bit of a secret, as it were, on the domestic middleweight scene. Now he's top to bill, looked very good in doing so, in a dominant performance. Where's next for him? We've seen him and Liam Williams calling each other out and having a go at each other on Twitter. Where's going to be the next step for Felix? Is he ready to be let off the leash now?
Yeah, I think he's ready to be let off the leash. The reason he's in the shadows a little bit was because he suffered a few injuries, you know, coming up to fights, and he's had to pull out of fights through injury. And obviously the last fight he was supposed to have, we was like a week off, weren't we, off the O2, went into lockdown. So he's had a few of them going on. You know, he had a cut on one fight just before in Spa. I think it was the last Spa he got cut. Yeah, he had an hand injury. So he's had a bit of a nightmare really. And as you say, he's gone under the radar. But when he got offered this fight to top the bill, I jumped at the chance for him because I said, look, this is your time now to put yourself in, you know, the public spotlight and showcase your skills, what I know that you've got, and you know, take a decent fight on and just show what you're all about, you know. And he is ready to be let off the leash. I mean, Liam Williams is obviously a world level fighter, and Liam's going to go on to fight for the WBC title, and he's got a chance of beating anybody really in the world as well. I think he's a talented fighter. But the route for Felix would be to take that British title, obviously, if Liam vacates it, or there's a chance that Eddie might be able to put a European title fight together with Sigani. So, you know, and then obviously if Liam wins the world title and then gain a bit more experience before moving on to that sort of level. But Felix will reach that level eventually.
Okay, well, before we move on, let's talk about Ted Cheeseman. Obviously, not this past weekend, the show before, Anthony Fowler returned to the ring. Dominant performance against Adam Harper. That's been a fight that's been discussed both by Ted and by Anthony Fowler. What did you make of his performance, and is that a fight that you're interested in for Ted?
Yeah, I thought Anthony boxed well, especially in the early rounds. He got his jab to work, and you know, he looked good in what he done with Harper. I mean, Harper's quite a limited fighter, but he's a strong kid. Comes to fight. I expected Anthony to get him out of there, to be honest, but yeah, he boxed well. And like as you say, in that division, so welterweight division, there's some big fights to be made. I mean, Eddie spoke to me after the Ted Cheeseman fight about giving Sam Egerton the rematch, you know, and as I've said all along, in close fights like that, where both fighters think they won the fight, I think, you know, it's a right thing to do. I said to Ted, look, there might be a rematch here. You know, it's been an hard fight, but he said as long as the money's right, he'll do the rematch with Sam. And, you know, that fight there, that rematch there, you know that's going to sell a stadium out. You know everyone's going to tune in on Sky to watch that fight because everyone loved the first fight. So we'll see what plans Eddie's got to say. But, you know, I think the Egerton rematch is more likely to happen more than any other fight.
Also, we saw on the card this past weekend, Kieran Conway and Nav Mansouri at 154 pounds. Another great fight. Seems like probably I wouldn't say marquee division in the UK, because obviously the heavyweights are doing their thing on the world stage, but it's a pretty vibrant division, 154 pounds. Must really get Ted up for those fights. Yeah,
and Kieran's a decent fighter as well. You know, I thought he looked good the other night against Mansouri. He's got everything in his armour. He's technically he's good, and he's a good thinker, and he's massive on the weight. You know, and pitting him against like Fowler. I like to see Fitzgerald obviously come back as well into it. You know, let's not forget how good Scott Fitzgerald is. He's, you know, I know he's got his problems at the moment, but you know he's still the British champion. Even though I thought Ted won that fight, but he's still in the mix as well. And so you've got a few really good fighters in the mix. You've got like Ted, you've got Sam Egerton, you've got Anthony Fowler, Kieran Conway, Scott Fitzgerald, you know, so you've got some really good operators in that domestic scene that can all fight each other. And it's really exciting, it really is.
That's the thing as well with it. They've all got a little bit of a narrative. There's a bit of a story to each fight as well, so it's good. Yeah, we're a big fan of the super welterweight division at the minute. Moving on, John Ryder. What have we got in store for John Ryder? Any update with the Gorilla?
John Ryder, yeah, just waiting really. It's all a waiting game now, because obviously when Canelo was fighting on September the 12th, it was like Callum Smith was out in front with the as the favourite for the fight, and John was sort of sitting in second favourite in the wings to see whether they would work the financial deal out. But obviously now Canelo ain't going to fight September the 12th. We don't know now when he's going to fight. So I think the whole of that division surrounds whatever Canelo's going to do, because obviously that's where the money is. So yeah, so we'll just wait and see if that fight comes back around, whether Canelo picks Smith. If he don't pick Smith, whether he picks Ryder. Eddie mentioned to me about fighting Daniel Jacobs, maybe in a final eliminator. And as you know, the WBC title has now become vacant because Benavidez never made the weight. John's out of the bricks, John's the top-rated fighter in the WBC. I think he's ranked 7. And I think Jacobs is ranked 4. So maybe Eddie might be thinking about pitting them two together. I don't know how it all stands in there, whether Yildirim, who's number 1, gets the automatic shot. But that's another title chance to look at. And then, as I keep saying, John desperately wants to fight Billy Joe again. You know, their first fight, I think that was 7 years ago, and all funny enough, their first fight, there was nothing in that fight. I thought that the true result would have been a draw on that fight, but, you know, I think that John would love to fight Billy Joe. I've asked Eddie about it loads of times, but Eddie just don't even answer me on that fight. And Billy Joe never mentions John's name either. No one seems to want to mention John's name. He's like a dangerous fight. He's not got any belts to offer, but he's a dangerous fight. He's not just like one of the top 3 in the domestic scene, super middleweights. He's one of the top 3 in the world. So, you know, no one seems to want to mention John's name, but the reality of it is he's there and he ain't going anywhere, and he's like wanting to fight either Callum Smith, Billy Joe, Danny Jacobs. He wants to fight the top names. So it's whatever Eddie wants to put together. You know, if it was my decision, I'd have the rematch with Callum Smith straight away. I'd have the rematch with Billy Joe straight away. But, you know, you can't force people to fight. And it is all about the money at the end of the day. And so we've just got to sit back and wait to see what Eddie Hearn wants to do. That's basically what it is, really. Make
an interesting point there. It's something that potentially, you know, some boxing fans at least may not really think about. And the fact that, I mean, we've seen it throughout the entire history of boxing, but in kind of the recent years of Canelo Alvarez, Floyd Mayweather, even Anthony Joshua, Oscar De La Hoya, the money fighters often have to sort their fight out before anybody else can sort their fights out. It's that trickle-down effect of waiting to see what the money man does in what division and who he's going to fight. How frustrating is that when you've got a horse in the race, as it were, in John Ryder, and there is so much uncertainty around such a big fight?
You know, it's really, really frustrating because, look, me and most people thought that John Ryder beat Callum Smith. I thought he drew with Billy Joe. Now, they're the top fighters in the world. You know, they're the top super middleweights in the world, in my opinion. Now, one of them, if they both fight each other, if Billy Joe fights Callum Smith, all well and good, put the belts on the line, brilliant. But the winner of that fight should be looking to defend against John Ryder. And the reason why is they both haven't got, they've got wins on paper over him, but they both know in the back of their mind that they never beat John Ryder, both of them. And I don't know how you can walk around that in the back of your mind, knowing that you never beat a guy who's in your country, in your division, and you just both ignoring him. You never ever mention his name. It's like you're totally avoiding the man, like don't live in this country, or he don't belong there. Do you know what I mean? So it's very, very frustrating for me and for John. But we can only do what Matchroom and Eddie Hearn wants to do, you know, and that's what it boils down to. And I can call them out as both as much as I like, but it's down to Eddie Hearn. And if Eddie Hearn don't want to do John Ryder, Callum Smith, or if he don't want to do Billy Joe, John Ryder, and there's nothing we can do about it. You know, we're going to have to fight somebody else. But, you know, I think John's had it pretty tough. If you look at his fights, you know, he knocked out the what was the Danish guy he knocked out? Patrick Nelson was ranked #1 with the WBA. John knocked him out. Then he won a final eliminator against Sorokin. Then he sort of done another final eliminator for the interim against Akaway. He was ready to fight Lemieux, actually. And he'd already won a final eliminator. There was no reason for him, really, to fight Lemieux, really. It was a risky fight. Lemieux pulled out. Then he got an unbeaten Australian Akaway, everyone was raving about, you know, beat him. So he really, really earned his shot at them world titles. And then for him to gain a world title and win the world title, really, and not get the decision, it's so frustrating, it really is. You know, like, how many times has he, you know, not going to get close decisions? It's really frustrating. And the worst thing about it is his name's never mentioned afterwards by Callum Smith or Billy Joe. I just don't want to know at all. Just avoid him like the plague they do. And it's really frustrating, because if they piped up a little bit, like I'm saying to you, with Cheeseman and Egerton, we'll do the fight again. No, it's an hard fight. No, you've got to go to the well to win that fight again. But we're happy to do it as long as the money's right. But they just don't mention his name. I don't want to know. They were talking about, I think Joe Gallagher and Callum Smith was talking about defending against Zach Parker. I'm not being funny. Why would you mention Zach Parker's name, not John Ryder's name? It's ridiculous.
And there's also the built-in narrative from the first fight as well. As you correctly pointed out, the Ted Cheeseman and Sam Eggington fight was a very close fight. Tasha Jonas versus Terry Harper, another very close fight that we're looking towards a rematch. Another fight that involves Joe Gallagher, by the way. So
exactly,
hopefully,
we've heard Jonas's camp, you know, talking about they stop talking about they want the rematch, you know, because they believe that they won the fight. Good, have the rematch. It's like Taylor Pearson, isn't it? She, you know, straight away, a lot of people thought Pearson won that fight. Bang, she's going, let's have the rematch. She ain't shied away from the rematch, you know, because that's what true champions do. If you're a champion and you're a fighter and you don't think you've actually really beat someone, you should be saying, look, let's get the rematch on, let's do it. Now, the Canelo fight, I can understand everyone wanting a Canelo fight. I can understand Billy Joe and Callum Smith saying, oh, I want to do the Canelo fight. Of course, good luck to you. Because that's the fight where you're going to get the most money. So, of course, you know, I ain't going to say anything against them doing that. Same as if they wanted to fight each other to unify the belts. That's cool as well. But don't be mentioning other names apart from John Ryder's if you ain't going to do them two fights. Because John Ryder is the next fighter in the world division and in the British division looking to fight them two. So don't try and avoid him and make out he's not there, because he's ready and waiting to go.
Okay, well, hopefully John Ryder lands on a big fight sometime soon and gets a little bit of the rubber the green somewhere along the line as well. But before I let you go, Tony, ahead of this weekend, Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin, what do you make of that fight? Obviously, pay-per-view return. Well, doesn't return. Pay-per-view goes to Eddie's Garden.
Yeah, it's a great fight. It's a fantastic idea, because who would have thought that we would have had a fight like this, Whyte-Povetkin, you know, for the WBC interim belt as well. And who would have thought we'd have had this fight on the fourth week of fight camp? You know, it's an incredible idea. I hope it works out for them on a pay-per-view. I'm sure it's going to, you know, be worth their while. And, you know, what a great fight it's going to be. As they say, two left hookers, you know, they can both bang, they can both fight. And I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. And like the fight camp, some reason is we've had great fights there, and this is going to be one of them as well. I'm looking forward to Taylor Pearson. I'm looking forward to Dillian Whyte-Povetkin, you know, and obviously all the countries are going to be behind Dillian Whyte, and hoping he can come through and get his shot at the world title, because, you know, same as what I'm saying there about frustration, how frustrated must he be, you know, for how long he's waited for his shot. You know, he deserves his shot. He's fought all the hard fighters, all the hard contenders in the division, and he deserves to get his shot, you know, and let's hope that he comes through.
If I had to push you for a prediction, Tony?
I think White's going to come through. I think he's the fresher fighter. Obviously, Povetkin's, what is he, 41 now, is he, Povetkin? You know, he's a good fighter, but I think if Whyte boxes the right fight, but he's a little bit smart, moves his feet a little bit, because he's a bit cumbersome on his feet, Povetkin. I remember when Joshua fought him, you know, and avoids that left hook as well that he's got, moves to the other side of the left hook. I think that he can beat him, I really do. And I think he can stop him as well.
Okay, well, Tony Sims, always a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks very much for speaking to me on your holiday, your well-deserved, much-needed holiday, might I add. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Anytime, Rob. Thanks, mate. God bless, mate.
Tony. Cheers, mate.
Bye.